Hi FlossTube, this is McCleary Texstylust and welcome to my channel. This channel is about cross stitching and quilting and sometimes crafts, but today it's going to be all about quilting, and in particular it's going to be about the Blackbird Designs quilt along that Olivia B and I are hosting. So Olivia has posted a video where she did a flip through of some of the more readily available books. Today I'm going to be doing a flip through of mostly out of print books, but we did hear back in the comments on her videos and on my Instagram that everyone was still very interested in seeing the other books that may not be more readily available. So today I'm going to show a flip through of these books. Oops. And one project that is a kit that is unfortunately not readily available, but if you stumble across it in a quilt store, at least you'll know that it's a Blackbird design. Carol the Saltbox Stitcher also posted a video recently that shows all of the Blackbird books, minus maybe one or two, and in addition many of the projects that she has started. And if you have not seen that video or Olivia's video, I will post those links below. You really need to go check them out. It's lots and lots of eye candy and will give you an immense amount of inspiration of a Blackbird design quilt that you may want to quilt. Also later in this video, I will post a clip that shows the tools and supplies that you'll need to do the freezer paper with starch applique method so that you can get prepared if that is the method that you would like to see demonstrated. Olivia B also posted a video recently showing all of the tools and supplies that she uses for her Applique method. And she also has a really cute little Applique tool holder that she designed and created that is just adorable. You'll definitely need to go check that out. Again, I will post the link below to her channel and to that video. This is Higdon Camp, 1924. The first quilt up is American Patchwork. I love this quilt. I love the floral and the homespun and the red pinstripe. It's just gorgeous. Here is the table of contents for this book. The next quilt up is called Camp Revel. And I believe there is a cross stitch pattern that corresponds with this. It's also out of print, but I have seen a couple of folks post it on Instagram recently. The next quilt up is the basket weaving class. I believe this is a wool quilt. So basket weaving class at Higdon Camp. And then a penny mat called Oh My Stars. This is the first penny mat I've seen that has points like this. There's also a camp sweater up here. Not many of us tend to do the cross stitch on our sweatshirts anymore, but that would still be a really darling pillow. Flag Garden. This one is so pretty, and I can see there's a lot of opportunity to change out the colors and still, but this is gorgeous. It's just gorgeous. If you've ever seen a Blackbird quilt in real life, you'll know that the pictures do not do them justice. The next quilt up is Fireworks at the Beach. As Carol mentioned in her video, this is very much a stack and whack, which is where you take your fabric and you lay it out in a specific way so that you can cut similar pieces, and then when you put them together as diamonds, they make a particular looking star. It's a really fun type of method to use. Over here we have a rug hooking pattern. It's called Red Sky at Night. Those of you with puppy dogs are going to love this one. I love the red background. It's so pretty. There is a cross stitch pattern in here, Higdon Camp 1924. So there's a pillow pattern. The next one is Evening Flight. I think this is probably my favorite one in this book. I love the background. I love the colors. I love the black and red and brown together. It's just gorgeous. Then we have the Poison Ivy Picnic Quilt. Look at these cute little bees over here in the corner. And then at the end we have the Higdon Camp wool pillow. And that shows you another picture of the penny rug and the hooked rug. And then on the back we have the mini wool pillow basket. So again, this is Higdon Camp. $19.24. This book is called Nuts and Berries, and if I'm not mistaken, it's the very first official book that was published under Barb and Alma's name together. There's a lovely picture of them right here, and here are the table of contents for the projects in this book. The first quilt up is Fern Rose. I love the applique in this. There's something really compelling about a design that's repeated with just a little bit of color variation. This is very pretty. The next quilt is Berry Stars and Fall Celebration. This is the one in this book that I just love. In fact, I think there's another one in the back, but I really, really love this one. And although the picture shows that these are blended pretty well, I can just picture those in a little bit darker colors. Anything to do with fall is definitely in my wheelhouse. The next quilt up is called Scrap Lily. This one is so fun. This is called Sunflower Seeds. It's a very striking quilt. I can see this hanging on a wall in the summertime. And you could change this up if you're not a blue person and you put red behind here or a really nice summer green. That would look gorgeous. Over here we have a great wool applique bird and pumpkin blossom purse. This is an applique. It looks like on a cotton knit shirt, but you could absolutely do that on a bag or a pillow or something. That is a really nice classic design. Here we have the pumpkin blossom rug. This is a rug hooking. And then over here, Harvest Dance. I don't know if you can see it, if it's coming through in the video, but you have a slightly lighter fabric here that's a star shaped. And this is just gorgeous. Very, very pretty. Next quilt up is called Afternoon in Hanalei. Hanalei is in Hawaii. This is really pretty. Here's the other quilt I really love. It's called Just Nuts Over Acorns. And there's another one right here that you can't really see. It's using the same blocks. It's called Gathering the Harvest. And then there's a sampler right here called Pumpkin Blossom Sampler. And I believe that's a cross of applique and embroidery. I don't believe that's on cross-stitch fabric, but I could be wrong. I haven't looked that close at it. And then on the back, the other quilt that I really love is Pumpkin Blossoms. This is so, so pretty. So that is Nuts and Berries. I also wanted to mention, it's not pictured again in the book, but this is called Harvest Sampler. It's done on black burlap, and the instructions are in the book. Next up is Lavinia's Pressed Flowers, and this was published in 2003. And it has the really lovely yellow and blue, French yellow and blue that's together with a lot of florals. Here is the cover quilt. It's called Wildflower Cottage. If you're not a yellow and blue person, this would translate beautifully into a red house with, lighter colors, or this would look really pretty in green as well. So it's a very cute pattern. I love the weeping willows there. This is really pretty. Sometimes if you see a quilt that's just not your colors, it's a little bit challenging to look past what's in front of you to see what could be. But just use your imagination and kind of think about what else you could do with the pattern. I know that one of my very favorite patterns that is by another artist, if I had looked at the cover picture on the pattern, I never would have purchased it. I really had to see it made up in a different colorway to see the possibilities of that pattern. Here's the table of contents for this book. Next up is a quilt called Sweet Memories. This is really, really pretty. It has the same sashing that you'll see in the Warm Hearts book. This has, I don't know if you call those artichokes or I'm not sure what pattern that is based off of. It's really cute. Just the vine has little hearts for leaves around that. Again, this would also look beautiful in another colorway, but it's gorgeous just the way it is. I really like the border method on here. It makes it look like it has a wavy border, but it really doesn't. It's just a piece border, but it gives you the effect of having a scalloped border. Next is Rose Moss Garden. This would look great in patriotic colors as well as the colorway that they're showing here. We also have a hooked rug over here called Starstruck. And then there is a Posy penny mat. I love the patriotic colors on this too. It's very lovely. You could use the same colors as well and kind of switch them around. Maybe have the cream as the background and blue dots, and it would look just as gorgeous as this one. Over here you have instructions on how to do a pillowcase and a project. Here is a quilt called the Peony Patch. This is a wall hanging size. This is very, very pretty and striking and reminiscent of something that you would see in the 20s or even earlier in the late 1800s. This one Carol highlighted. I'd like to highlight it as well. Each of these blocks is a large hexagon, and then there is flowers on each of them. This is a stunning, stunning quilt. If you have a lot of scraps and you like to carry around projects, hand projects, this would be a great quilt to do. This is definitely a masterpiece. Over here we have some pillow shams, so they give instructions on how to do the pillow shams, and there's also a picture of a cross stitch pattern that is shown later. This is called the Full Blooms quilt. Here we have a wool applique pillow with a little bit of cross stitch on it called the Sampler Bouquet pillow. And it appears like they've put it on a piece of wool and then they've attached the piece of wool to a pillowcase. Next up is a quilt called Bright Bouquet. I'm not positive, but I believe this is also a wool quilt. And last but not least is the sampler cross-stitch pattern that's included in here. This is called Mildred's Sampler Pillow. This is really, really darling. You could leave it as is, or you could actually even fill in that posy to match whatever quilt that you have done from this book. So again, this is called Lavinia's Pressed Flowers. Also, for those of you who may be interested, there is information on how to make this yo-yo quilt, and the part of the pattern that it talks about is the binding or the top of the quilt. So it is included in this book. This book is called Friendship's Garden, and it was published in 2003. And this one is actually published from Alma and Cherry Ralston. And I believe that Carol Saltbach Stitcher mentioned that Cherry often contributed to their books, and she was also local to the area where they lived. On the first quilt, this is Cherry's bed set. I love how they have this photographed. It's just lovely. And there's a couple other projects showing that they will show later in the book. Here is the table of contents for this book. The second one up is Alma's Friendship Garden, and you're going to see this one in 3 different colorways. So this is Alma's colorway. This is Jean's Friendship Garden. Her colorway is more pinks and summery coral reds and greens. And this is Sherry's Friendship Garden. Is this the same one? No, this is the one that's on the front. So this is the one that we looked at first. That's a very beautiful colorway. Next up is Tending the Garden Together. Here they've used some Dresden plates and some applique and some piece quilts. And it's also, or piece blocks, and it's also a pieced quilt. So applique on pieced blocks is just beautiful, I think. This is another one that if these are not your colors, these are, this is in my colorway, but you could probably do this in another colorway. Again, maybe some reds and pinks and greens, something similar to this, and it would be really, really pretty. There is a pillow here called Welcome Dear Friend. It is embroidered. It's very cute. And there's a little piece of cross stitch called True Love. And I don't know if it's mentioned later, but there is also instructions to do the embroidery on the edge of the pillow slip. Here is a set of pin cushions that you can monogram. I believe all of the letters are included. It's called Pins and Needles. And this is a pillow called Down the Garden Path. It's also very similar to a pattern that was released in the early 1900s called American Beauty Rose. I really like this picture. I really like this quilt. It's called Autumn Maze. It has a homespun that is the border, and the colors are just lovely. I could see this on my couch. Here at the back of the book, we have a hooked rug called Summer Tribute, and it's very pretty. I like everything about this rug. I think it's just lovely. And then last but not least, there is an album cover and a garden journal cover, and both of these patterns. This looks like it's done in wool, and this is done in cross stitch. So again, this is called Friendship. So again, this is called Friendship's Garden by Alma Allen and Cherry Ralston. This book is called Sweet Summer, and it was published in 2006. And it has several projects in here that are really wonderful. First one up is a quilt called Primrose Garden. I love the pinks and corally pinks and reds in here, and I really love that border that goes around, the applique border. Here is the table of contents for Sweet Summer. And I did want to mention that in every single book, they do have instructions. Most of them are around needle turn, but some of them have instructions. Some of the newer ones had instructions on how to do freezer paper applique as well. But in every book, there is information on how to do applique. Next up is called Garden Posy. I can see this hanging off of a door or over a door or next to where you do your mail. This is really, really cute. It could also be a great pocket to put under your sewing machine or as a gift for a friend. The next up is Ferns and Flowers hooked rug. There's about 3 or 4 hooked rugs that I just love, and someday when I learn how to do that, I will be doing it, and this will be one of them. I love that. Down here is a canvas penny mat, and over here is a monogrammed pin keep. So it has the painted container and the pin keep, and I believe this is in wool. Over here is a Sunday brunch table runner. If you wanted to get into doing hexes, this would be a great first project to do. It's not too big. Over here is something called all frayed out pillow. Now this is another type of applique where you definitely leave the edges to fray out and raw, and we can talk about that later when we get to the part where we're talking about the different kinds of applique and demonstrations, and I'll show this one as well. Here's a beautiful needle punch called It's the Berries. Look at that cute little button trim in there. The next one is called Cabin Flowers Quilt. This is really, really pretty. It looks so summery and just, it looks like a beautiful quilt. Cameo Rouge Quilt. This is gorgeous. You could do this in other colors as well. I think I mentioned in an earlier video, it would look great if you did this in patriotic colors and changed out either your peace blocks or your stars or the middle, or mixed them up in different colors, different red, white, and blues. Tulips and Vines needle case. This looks like it is actually felted needle punch wool. So you're punching wool roving into the wool background to get that effect. The last is Indigo Stars. Actually, it's not the last. I think there's one more on the back. This is a very classic quilt, very pretty. Nope, it was the last one. So this is called Sweet Summer by Barb and Elma. Here is a kit that came out several years ago. I think it was released at the same time as the In the Meadow book. I could be wrong. I'd have to go back and look at my list to see what year it came out. I believe it was only released as a kit. It has a pattern for a table runner, and it also has the pattern for a bed runner, something that you would lay either across your pillows or across the end of your bed. I have not opened it. I really don't want to open it yet, but this is the only way that it came. It was not a separate pattern. I bought it new many years ago. I have not seen one on eBay or anywhere else, but if you do happen to see this when you're out shopping, you'll know that this is a Blackbird's. Next up is Warm Hearts. This one was published in 2001, and it's the one that I had on my unicorn list, and fortunately for me, one of my viewers had this in her collection and very kindly sent it to me. It was just a wonderful, wonderful gift. There are 2 quilts in here that I am definitely going to do. One of them I'm already in the process of kitting up, and you may see pieces of it as we go through the quilt along. And it's the very first one here. It's called Warm Hearts. I have a fabric that has red pinstriping or red ticking on it with roses all over it. I believe that's what I'm going to use for my background. I don't think I'm going to turn it over, so mine's going to be a little bit more bright and more leaning towards the red than this one. But I love, love, love this quilt. So this is Warm Hearts. Here is the table of contents for this book. There's several projects in here. The next project up is Spring Snowflakes. I love how they took the autumnal colors and translated it into the quilt. And it also uses the old-fashioned striping that unfortunately is no longer available. The next up is called Spring Fever. And I believe that the embroidery template to embroider those pillow shams and the pattern for the pillow shams is also included in this book. This one is called Friendship House. It's a great wall hanging size. It's really, really cute. Another one that if these are not your colors could definitely translate into another colorway very easily. Oops, sorry about moving everything around there. Hopefully it's still in frame. The next up is Early Blossom Jubilee. This fabric, this background fabric here is so, so pretty. It's an old-fashioned floral, but I really like the flowers in here. Notice how you kind of get a different look. You really notice the cross stems here where they've used the darker color to put the blossoms on there. If you switched that, this would look totally different, but still very pretty. This is the second quilt that I'll be making out of this book. It's called Winter Wonderland. I've shown it before. I really, really love this quilt. I'm still not sure about the bunnies, if they'll be included or not. I may put something else underneath. Over here we have Mr. Rabbit's Pillow Pocket, which I believe is here. Then we have the Long Trip Home Hooked Rug right here. This is the Winter Wonderland quilt, another picture of it. And then over here, it kind of gets lost in the picture, but there is a wool purse called the Winter Bird Purse. Here is a penny rug. I really love this penny rug. It's just beautiful. I love the reds and the creams. And then down here is a red work pillow. There's a cross stitch in here. It's called the Peace Sampler. It's very pretty. And they've not really matted it. It's just folded under and tacked to a mat. And on the back here is another wool piece that I really like called the Harvest Purse. And then here's another picture of the Winter Bird Purse. And these are done in wool. So again, this is called Warm Hearts by Barbara and Elma. The next one up is Country Inn. This was published in 2010 and it is just packed full of projects and beautiful, beautiful quilts. There is a picture of one of the quilts on the bed and there is a cross stitch hanging in the background. No, it is not included in this book. In fact, I'm not quite sure which stitch that is, but it's very pretty. Here's another couple of pictures of the quilts. You'll notice there's a monogrammed pillowcase there. I'm going to go slowly through this book, not only because it is chock full and there's many things you want to see, but also because I'm trying really hard not to make sure I'm showing something that I shouldn't. There's also another lovely cross stitch there in the background. Here is the table of contents for this book. One of the things you'll notice if you look through here is this book also has a plethora of really, really good recipes because this is about going to an inn. Really quick here, strawberry jam, stuffed French toast, date and walnut scones, egg and sausage casserole, Swedish pancakes, broiled grapefruit. I highly recommend broiled grapefruit. It is wonderful. It does not taste like what you would think. Cranberry orange muffins, apple roll-ups, Belgian waffle bits. So not only do you get some beautiful quilts, but you also get some great recipes in this one. So these are the main focus quilts from this book, and we have Evening Bloom and Country Rose, so it's the same quilt done in two different colorways. This I know is done in an old line of French General. This one I don't know what the line would be. And then block by block, Evening Bloom. This is the tulip block. Evening Bloom quilt, Country Rose quilt, but the block is called the Tulip block. This is block 1. Oops, almost showed it. This is block 2, the Petunia block. Block 3, the Peony block. Block 4, the Foxglove block. Block 5, the Iris block. Block 6, the Coxcomb block. Block 7, the Daffodil block. Wouldn't it be lovely if daffodils came in that color? Oh, that would be so awesome. Block 8, the Coneflower block. Block 9, the Daylily block. There is some very small pieces on this one, so that's going to be a challenge if you're making this quilt and it's your first time appliquing. It definitely can be done though, don't despair. And then the other projects in this book, this is a hexagon pin board. I think this is the coolest looking thing. Look at that little hexagon with the bee in it. I'm not sure if that is on the fabric or if that's a pin. It could be a pin, but I think this is a wonderful color. Another thing you could do is very often if you find an antique quilt, it's usually got a lot of holes in it or it's very worn. Those are the ones that are the most inexpensive, but you could cut apart pieces of the quilt where it's not as worn, or even if it is worn, because it could look very shabby chic, and frame it and do something very similar to that. The next project is a hexagon pincushion. Here is the smaller cross-stitch chart called Little Red Hen. There is the lavender sachets, and it will show instructions on how to do several of the letters and different finishes for these sachets. Has the instructions to do the monogram pillowcase. Instructions on creating these vintage tea lights. This is a quilt called Sweet Thing. It's a really nice beginner pattern. There's some half square triangles and the rest are just straight stitching blocks and rectangles. And it's great to use like a layer cake or jelly rolls. I don't think you can do the half square triangles out of jelly rolls, but you could definitely use a layer cake to create this. This one is called Bachelor Buttons. This is another favorite of mine. It is so pretty. I mean, who would not love those colors of reds and pinks and greens? Here's a picture of the layout, but here's an up close of one of the blocks on that quilt. Look at that floral. Isn't that gorgeous? This block is called Shooting Stars. I love the faded vintage patriotic look of this one. This is a wool rug called Pot of Posies. This is very pretty. On my list of rugs that I want to do, this is on there. And that is a mixture of wool and fabric. The next project in here is called Country Charm. This is also a great beginner quilt. You have some large half square triangles and a smaller 9 patch. And this is a great stash buster as well. And then that is Country Inn. This is Birds of a Feather, and it was published in 2006, I believe. I'm going to double check because I'm not positive on that one. This is the quilt that I am currently working on block 1 right now. And I'm also going to go slow on this one because it has so much in there. I'm going to, again, try to cover up the things that I should not be showing. So right here in the front of the book is a lovely picture of one version of the quilt, and then this antique needle pin keep something rather bird over here. I think this is just the cutest thing. And here is the focus quilt of this book. This is Alma's version called Feather Your Nest, and this is Barb's version called Birds of a Feather, and then there's another version in the back that the kit that I have is that version. Here is the table of contents of this book. You can see there is, of course, many blocks to this quilt, and then there's also several other projects in this book. First up is the first block. It is Cardinal, and the great thing about this book is it gives you information about each of the birds that they're highlighting in the block. This is a little challenging here. Okay, let's see if we can get to the next one. Block 2 is Junco, and block 3 is the Martin. Block 4 is the Hummingbird, and it has cute little pears and a couple of hummingbirds in its piece. Block 5 is the Baltimore Oriole. Block 6 is the Mockingbird. Block 7 is the Bluebird. Block 8 is the Western Meadowlark. Block 9 is the Rose-breasted Grosbeak. Block 10 is the American Goldfinch, which I did not know was a wild canary, so I learned something new about this one. We have goldfinches here in Oregon. I believe it's the state bird. The next block is the American Kestrel. And then the last block, I think it's the last block, is the Downy Woodpecker. We have a lot of woodpeckers here too in Oregon, but we don't have that particular one. And then here is a list of the projects in this book. The first one is Summer Harvest Redwork Pillow. The next one is a smaller quilt. Well, actually, it is not a small quilt. It's 81 by 81 called Doves in the Garden. And it is pieced in the middle and applique around the edge. Let's see if I can get that to lay a little bit flatter for you. The next project, I love this one. It's Coscombe Harvest. So these look like they're smaller quilts, but they're not. This one's 88 by 88. These are just very large blocks. The next project is called the Button-Up Purse, and it's cross-stitched with some buttons, and then it is placed on a purse, which they include a pattern for this if you don't want to put it on a pre-made purse. The next project is called the Berry Hill Pillow. This is a wool applique. The next project is Proud as a Peacock Pillow. This is definitely out of the norm for Barb and Elma, I think both in colors and in design, but it is the Birds of the Feather book, so it makes sense that it was included. This looks very Aboriginal to me. This is called In Bloom Pincushion. I love the color of that wool on that one. This is called Dove Placemats, and these are stenciled on to a background and painted. This quilt is called the Empty Nest. This is, again, one of those wool mats or wool rugs that I'm very interested in doing. This one's called Winter Birds Penny Mat. I'm going to do it exactly like it's shown. It's so gorgeous. And here's another one of the hooked rugs that I think is just stunning. Here's a more up-close picture of the colors. It is so, so pretty. Spring's Arrival hooked rug. This is called Pumpkin Patch. It's another one that I hope to do one day. And this coloring is achieved by dipping many of the fabrics into a Rit dye. Birds on a Wire. This is more the colorway of the quilt that I am doing. And I believe I even have that border in most of all of this fabric. That is Birds of a Feather by Barb and Elma. And last but definitely not least for this segment is When the Cold Wind Blows. There are a couple of quilts in here that I'm in the process of kitting up, and I'll point those out when we get there. This is definitely one of my favorite books. This and Birds of the Feather and Warm Hearts. There's other favorites, of course, that I don't have right now, but I hope to get them someday. And hopefully between my library and Olivia's library and definitely everything that Carol showed, and Lisa Kendra Stitcher also has a couple that I think did not show up on Carol's video. We'll be able to bring you the entire catalog of Blackbird quilt books. So here we go, When the Cold Wind Blows. Here is the table of contents. This one, similar to the Birds of a Feather, has several blocks and the templates, and then there's other quilt projects that are included. Here is the focus quilt of this book. This is Barb's version called Winter Garden and Alma's version called Love Letters. The first block is the Hedge Apple. And each time they show you both versions together. The second is called a Bur Oak Leaf. Has oak leaves and acorns. The next block is Winter Rose. The next block is called the Coxcomb. The next block is the Rose Hip. This block is called Holly Leaf. Ornamental Kale. Winter Wreath. And I think that is the last block of the quilt. Let's see here. I've got some things stick together. I'm not sure. Let me peek under here. Nope, there's one more block. The pomegranate. And there we go. That is the last block, the pomegranate. The next quilt in this book is called Autumn Thistle. This is really pretty. There's birds around here. I love the colors on this one. This is called Trick or Treat. I happen to know at least one of the participants in the quilt along is making this particular quilt. That's definitely an investment of time. Those are 5-inch blocks. This is Garden Song. It's a wool project. This quilt is called Harvest Basket. This is called Goldenrod in Bloom, and it uses one of their fabric lines that has the cross-stitch looking print on the fabric. This project is called Birds and Old Buttons Pillow. It's in wool. This is one of the quilts that I have kitted up. I have 2 lines of reds, one's from French General and one's from Kim Deal, and I will be using one of those for this quilt. This is on my list of soon to do. This is called Frost on the Ferns. I really, really love this quilt as well. This is actually a dark plum color that this is on. This is called the Back to School Pillow Sham. It's done on a homespun that's similar. You cross stitchers will definitely recognize the Autumn Bouquet. That is not included in this book. This is the Rose Hip Hooked Rug. And that is it for When the Cold Wind Blows. These are the tools and supplies you will use when doing freezer paper starch applique method. In no particular order, you will need, of course, freezer paper. You will need a good pair of scissors to cut your freezer paper with. These are typically paper or craft scissors. You will need a jar with a tight-fitting lid to put your starch in. You will need a good pair of applique scissors. They're generally smaller and they have a sharp point. These are my 2 favorite that I use the most. This is a pair of Kai's, that's K-A-I, and this is a pair of Applique scissors. You will need straw needles for stitching on your applique. They come in various sizes. You will need a size 11. You will need some temporary glue based. This is Roxanne's glue based, and it has a really nice bottle that it comes in with a fine tip point. You can also use Sue Daily, but whichever you choose to use, try to find something with the fine tip point so that you can put in just small amounts. You will need an indelible marker, fine tipped. I use Copic, but you could also use Sharpie. Just make sure it's indelible and fine tip. You will need a stiletto, that's the little sharp pointy thing here, and you will also need a wooden applique pressing tool. One end down here can do some pressing. The other end right here that's sharp and round also helps you do your rounded edges. You will need a 1/4 inch bias tape maker. You will need a stencil brush. They're short bristled and they're stiff, and this is what you will use to apply the starch. You will need some very fine thread. I like to use silk thread, but you can also use a fine weight cotton thread. This is, I believe, 100 weight, and I use Superior threads. They're my favorite. But an 80 weight or even a 60 weight cotton thread will be fine. The finer the thread, the more that your stitches are hidden. You can buy this online. You will need a craft iron because you want something with a really small sharp point. It's also nice to have an iron that is a small handheld. Just make sure it's one that doesn't have any steam vents. And then of course you will need your book or pattern, and you will need fabric. There are two more things that you will also need, and let me just change everything out here and I'll show you what those are. Here are the remaining items that you need for the freezer paper starch applique method. Of course, we're going to need some starch. Here is a concentrated liquid starch. It will need to be diluted using the directions on the back of the bottle to the right consistency. This is an aerosol spray starch. You can also buy it in a non-aerosol container. Either of these or something similar can be found at your grocery store in the laundry section. Just make sure that you are buying a true starch and not something that has other additives in it. You need just pure starch. The items like Best Press and Flatter and those types of things will not work for this method. You need a true starch. You will also need a firm pressing mat. This one is an Omni pressing mat, but any firm pressing mat will do. This one just happens to be small and portable, so it's very handy for applique. It's also great to have an emery board around, and that is used to file off the rough edges of a freezer paper template in case the cutting didn't go quite as planned. So if you have like a small bump or some ragged edges, you will need to file those down. Anything that is on your freezer paper template is going to translate to your applique piece, so you definitely want to take care of those edges. I hope you enjoyed that flip through. There's going to be at least one, if not two or more coming. Some of these are duplicates, of course, of what Carol showed. We thought it would be just a good idea to continue with the flip through so that you can see close-ups of what's in the books. And we hope that you will join us in the Blackbird Design Quilt Along. If you have any questions about the supply list that I provided or the one that Olivia provided, or you have questions about something that's in one of the books or questions about the books, please don't hesitate to drop a comment below and ask away. We are here to help. Also coming up soon will be the demo videos showing the applique and the freezer paper starch method. There will be more demos coming along, but those are the two that were most requested so far. In another upcoming video very soon, I will also do the giveaway for the 2,000 subscriber. I will draw the name for that, and I will also draw the name for the out-of-print Blackbird Design quilt book that we're doing as part of the SAL. So please show us all of your Blackbird Design quilt stuff. Please use the hashtag BBDQAL. Even if you've already made a quilt, go ahead and use that hashtag so that the rest of us can see what you've done and look at all that beautiful inspiration. So thank you for joining me, and I will be talking with you really, really soon. Bye-bye.